All right. We are, believe it or not, finishing up. We have been discussing the differences between what we know has really happened and the story that Yehuda tells us that doesn't seem to be exactly what we have learned. And we went through towards the end of the class last week of the very possible reasons why Yehuda did change his story, not because he was necessarily purposely, um, shall we say, exaggerating or filling in the empty spots, um, but because things had changed in his own attitude and his own view of what took place. Now, there was a very simple thing I could have I just simply put aside this entire discussion by saying, look, really, this is what happened. We don't read that Yosef did X, Y, Z, but that's probably what happened because Yehuda is telling us that's what happened. But as we pointed out, when you look at the text, there are certain things that are absolutely contradicting what Yehuda said. The concept, the idea, and he says it, and he tells his father, well, the man asked us all about his family. Do we have a father? Do we have a brother? Or so on and so forth. And that never happened. We read that they voluntarily offered that, asked that question, or I should say, gave that information to Yosef, who never really asked for it. So that's really a contradiction. So we are trying to deal with why those changes. And I'm coming to a point where we might take a different approach, another approach, we'll say. When we look at the story, at the soliloquy of Yehuda in front of the viceroy Yosef, we realize there's really a whole second focus about the story, and that's found in the actions of Yehuda. We saw the differences in the attitude of Yaakov, who first said, I'll never let you take my young son Binyamin, and then he changed his mind. Um, um, with Yehuda, we have a bigger problem. You see, Yehuda um, was different than his brothers. You see, the brothers um, could tell a story to their father of things that didn't really happen because his father wouldn't know. But Yehuda is now talking to the very man who was in the center of the conversation and of the events, and he's telling a different story. As I pointed out last week, well, who are you fooling? You're telling Yosef. Yosef was there. He knows what happened. So Chazal, our rabbis take the approach that I think that we find it in a number of different midrashim. That, as I pointed out before, really everything Yehuda had said to Yosef truly did happen, but the Torah just didn't include it. But as I pointed out just now, there are certain things that are contradictory. It wasn't just a matter of he filled in things that we did not know, but he said things that we know were not what really took place. Um, and because of that, Rav Amnon Bazak, who really is who I should say brought me to put together um, this shear, and this I suppose I would call it a hartza'ah. Um, he suggested the following: that Yehuda wasn't lying, at least not his eyes. Yehuda began to see changing his mind of what after things had happened, and he did something that is such a very simple, real, human thing. You begin to think that what you wanted to happen really did. You begin not thinking I'm going to change it, but we become very much committed and absolutely sure that certain things happen when they didn't happen, but it's something we thought did happen, we wanted to happen, or we had hoped it would have happened. Over the time, it may be a day or two, it might be a year or two, that the what occurred is not really exactly what occurred, but rather how you saw it occurred. Well, really, that guy didn't say that to you when you responded this way. But at the time, you thought that's what he's thinking about. And after the month and two and three, you said, well, you know why? Because he was saying this and this and that. Well, he wasn't. But you thought that that's what he meant. So we all do that. And it says, but that's what Yehuda was doing. It wasn't leaning, but he convinced himself, in effect, that untruth was the truth. It's a very common psychological defense that we have on ourselves. As far-fetched as we might think that it is really far more logical than simply saying, well, that really did happen and the Torah didn't write it and that's okay. Because when you look in the text itself, we go back, it's Perek Mem Gimel, when Yosef, after the first mission of the brothers, now what did he accuse them of? Being spies. And before he sends them back, he doesn't send them back. He first puts them all in jail, right? And he says, I'm a really good guy. I'll let you go back and bring food for your hungry family. He said, but just Shimon will stay. Well, when that happens, the brothers have I won't say a panic attack. They certainly had a conscious attack. And they realize that something's wrong. Things are doing pretty well, even after what they had done. God wasn't angry with them. Look, it's been 20 years, nothing bad happened. Yeah, we're hungry now, but so is everybody. And here now, their brother was being taken into the prison. Prison was also referred to as the bore because it was done underground, now that we have where we see our brothers and sisters being kidnapped and they're underground, we understand that was a way of keeping them in prison. And of course, the word bore was exactly where they threw Yosef and the bore. So perhaps that's what hit them. What we got another. Now another brother is being thrown into a bore, but we're not the ones who threw him there. So whatever the excuses were, they begin to regret what they did. And the powerful words that they use in Hebrew is Vayamu ish el achiv. They spoke to each other and they said one to another, Aval ashemim anachnu. Said that aval does not mean however. Aval also can mean indeed. Truly, I think is a good way of putting it. He said, truly, ashemim anachnu. We are to blame. It's our fault. Asher ra'inu tzarat nafsho b'hitchanano eleinu v'lo shamanu. Because we are, it says, al achinu, where we are, I haven't got a source on this, I'm sorry. He said, we are guilty. He said, al achinu, for what we did to our brother. Asher ra'inu tzarat nafsho b'hitchanano eleinu. Because we saw his pain, tzarat nafsho, the pain of his heart, his soul, when he was begging for us. When was he begging with them? Right. We might say, well, maybe he begged them, don't throw me in a pit. But we do know that he was crying out to get him out of the pit. Right. Velo shamanu, and we didn't listen to him. This is what I felt in my first lecture here about Yosef. That one of the powerful proofs that they never sold Yosef, because they were regretting the fact that they did not listen to him and take him out of the pit. When in reality, there was a far worse crime they committed by selling him as a slave. And their regret was, as I said then, their belief that he actually had been taken and devoured by an animal, and therefore he was killed, and therefore they were guilty for that. But he cried for us, take us out, and we didn't do it. We could have saved his life, and we didn't. That was their complaint. Rather than saying, we made a big thing, we shouldn't have sold him as a slave. They never say that. At any rate, they start to feel regret. To which, and I've mentioned this a number of times because it changes our view of the whole story. Now, Reuven, the great leader, right, or should be eldest leader, says, oh yeah? Vayan Reuven otam, and he said the following. He said, Hello, amarti alechem, al techetu bayeled. I told you not to do harm to the young man. He was 17 years old at the time. Velo shma'atem. But you didn't listen. Right? I'm a great guy. I'm a tzaddik. But you guys did everything wrong. You know? V'gam, and then he says crucial words. V'gam damo hine nidrash. And now his blood is being demanded. Which is a nice way of saying his death is now being punished. There's another proof that they really thought he was dead. Why would they say Damo? He was just sold. So there's a regret already now in the beginning of the whole mission when they were finally allowed to go, but one had to stay in the prison. So they realized what they had done to Yosef and how wrong it was what they had done. And together with regret comes a reassessment of what they did. And with that, maybe a new reality for them, at least for them anyway. So the story had changed in their minds. And for them, they are telling the truth. Even when they're telling the story to Yosef, they put it over in a very positive way. Listen, what they said. They said, Yehuda does, he's speaking to Yosef. It says, look, you asked us about our family. We answered you truthfully. Well, because as I told you, that never happened. Then we told you that his brother died, and now he is a favorite of our elderly father. Well, they never told him that the brother died. They said he's not here. Einenu. Never said he's gone. And as Yehuda's speech goes on, and you still demanded that we bring the younger brother to it, even though you knew how my father. Oh, that was the other part which I left out here. And we told you that this son, this younger one, is a favorite of our elderly father. I don't think they ever said that. They never said that. He just said, bring back your son, your younger son, and they left. They never told him that, look, we would, but you have to understand, my father's very, very old. They never said that. But when they're telling the story, they were thinking of what would happen to their father, and now it became that, well, we told you that. Well, no, you didn't. But you'd like to think that we told you that. So that's another thing. And, and you said we have to bring him anyway. And we said, that's going to kill our father. And you said, unless he comes, you won't be allowed to see me. So, in effect, they're saying to Yosef, you put us in a position that either we're going to die of starvation or it'll be a possible death of our father. It's a great way of painting the story when you want to, of course, file yourself blameless. And that's what they were doing. In effect, they were blaming him, not us. Yeah, we were wrong and we're bang and we regret it, but it happened. So I'll change. If I change the story a bit, we weren't that terrible. It was really your fault. Without this whole thing, which is true, by the way, without this whole spy, this wouldn't have happened. Why'd you accuse them of being spies? And especially when they came back the second time, and Yosef is proven, oh, see, they weren't spies. They came back. They saw, So the whole time, this was all wrong, and everything is happening because you put us in this situation. So that's how they paint the story, in effect. And this new version, as it were, that was internalized by the brothers, now believing that it's true. And therefore, they gave this story to Yosef. And there's only one person who really knows the truth, Yosef. He knows what really happened. Why is that important? Well, because now when Yosef saw how they were changing around the story, now he saw that even though they weren't very truthful of exactly what happened, he realized that was because of the fact that they were regretful for what they had done. They were changing the story because it couldn't go and say, we sold our son, our brother, or we killed our brother. Couldn't say that. So now Yosef sees that. And he sees their regret. He sees their, certainly Yehuda's refusal to make that same mistake of taking the youngest beloved son of the most beloved wife. He would not have it. He said, let me stay here, not my brother Binyamin. And when I started with what made Yosef break down, there it is. There it is. He recognized the regret. He saw that they learned the lesson, that they're not going to do again what they did to him. And as opposed to what I mentioned before, where I believe it was the Abarbanel, who says that was Yosef's plan. He was planning to make so sure they did tshuva, that they were regretful. And the argument against that was, who died and made you God? Since when do you have the right to decide if somebody did tshuva or not? That's what those who disagree with the Abarbanel are saying. You can't now say, oh, what a great guy Yosef is. He really wasn't doing anything bad. Just wanted to make sure that the brothers did tshuva. Who said you can do that? And we're going to aggravate our father and so on and so forth. But he said, I'm going to aggravate my father. I'm going to take somebody, put him in jail. But I'm going to make sure they did tshuva. You have no right to do that. This here, on the other hand, was not that. Not that this was Yosef's plan. Yosef's plan was a very clear one. I love my tata, I haven't seen him. My little brother, Binyamin, was 10 years old when I left. Yeah, he's 32 now, but he's still cute. I want him here. And he's my only real brother. Remember, we keep on forgetting that because throughout the Torah, we never think of it in the terms that the only full brother Yosef had was Binyamin. All the others were half brothers. So he wants to be with him. He wants to find out what things are. He wants to tell him about how it did. Not only did, but he said, you should stay with me. What did they do? They were. He hoped that they would not stand up. He'd have him officially in prison. Did you see what they did to the sons of Rachel? Is it worth your while to go back to Canaan? Stay here with me. Obviously, they've rejected us because we are sons of Rachel and not of Leah and the others. So he said, that's very much what he probably was thinking. He wanted to be with Binyamin, whom he missed and wanted to know about it, but also because he saw themselves as children of Rachel, and therefore we are not accepted in the family. So you might as well stay here. Yeah.
I was just wondering, there's a third person that has been quoted in the pasuk from Rishon, and that's Yaakov. So Judah is quoting from what his father said to him, and it's the only time I believe that Yosef hears this idea that he was torn by a beast. And, I'm just wondering if that could have also, been
Absolutely. That's also one of the things. As I said, again, my first approach towards this idea that he was not sold, but he actually, they thought, they didn't know he was sold, but they thought he indeed was taken by a beast. And therefore, when they brought this stained coat of his with blood as proof to the father, they weren't lying to him and playing a game with him, but they said the only way Papa is going to believe that his beloved son is gone is if we show him proof that he's dead. We know he's dead, but what are you going to go tell him? Oh, we threw him in a pit, Dad, and when I came back, I guess an animal took him. They couldn't say that. So they had to prove to him that he was dead, and they did it this way. So Yaakov 100% believed he was gone. And that's exactly what they say over here. And Yosef, on the other side, sees them as those who sold him. They weren't there at the sale, but when the Midianim, which is what the Torah says, when the Midianites take Yosef out of the pit, what does Yosef think? How did they know I was here? Huh. My brothers threw me here. They probably told them go again and probably got paid for it. So when he pulled out, so therefore he thinks they did sell him. In fact, we're going to see it later on.
But I'm saying this is the only time that Yosef is given.
That's what I'm going to say. That's right. His whole time he was thinking that they sold him and he's going to get him for it. And for the first time, he says now, "V'amar ach taraf," that their fathers thought that he was killed. What? He had lived in this dream world. And I'm sorry if those who hear that I'm repeating a little bit. I said in my first a different approach to what happened in this whole story. But he was living in his dream world that my parents, my father and my brothers have abandoned me. They sold me down to Egypt. 20 means that, have you ever come to look for me? No. Everybody always used to ask that question. How come Yosef never sent Papa a nice picture postcard from of the Sphinx and say, having a great time here, miss you. Why not? He was, after all, the viceroy of Egypt. He saw himself as being rejected from the family. And as I pointed out and added to that, it's totally logical for him. Because he remembers that TORAH, his great-great-grandfather, had 3 sons, but only one did special. And Abraham, his great-grandfather, had a nice son, 2 sons, but only one was taken and one was rejected. Then his grandfather Yitzchak had 2 sons, but only one was taken and the other one was rejected from this special. So now comes my father who has 12 sons. And who's going to be the one who's rejected? And I guess it's me. That's how he saw what all of these problems are, what he was doing. And that's what he had, this false concept, which he lived with since he was sold. And the first time, as you correctly pointed out, that he finds out that they thought he was dead. That's why they never came to look for him. It wasn't that they rejected him, they thought he was killed. Powerful, powerful reason for Yosef to break down. Very powerful. And in fact, they say it very simple. They say, Ve'achiv mate. Yehuda, not they. Yehuda says to the viceroy, you know, this special youngest brother that we have is very special to his father. Because father had two, he had the two sons from Ishto, from his wife. Well, how many wives did he have? 4. But whom does he refer to as his wife? Rachel. Yehuda, the son of Leah, recognizes that for his father, there was one real wife that he had, which was Rachel, which is exactly whom he worked for. And by the way, I'll take a little step back because it's something that we're going to see in this Parsha, Mir Hashem, in 2 days in Vayetze, where it's going to say that it says, Vayar Elokim ki snua le'ah. The concept of snua, she was hated, is something that's really misunderstood. It doesn't mean hated. It often is used simply as less preferred. And the proof we find in a number of places. But in Dvarim, when we talk about this very story of Yaakov, really, but in the beginning of Kitetse, so it says there, if a person marries 2 wives, one is loved, one is hated. They should not give the birthright to the first son of the hated one, but it doesn't mean hated. Okay, I love you, I hate you, but I'll marry you anyway. That doesn't happen. It was a preferred wife and a less preferred wife. That's what happened. So at any rate, Yehuda recognizes it, and he says it publicly, though he doesn't know that the viceroy is Yosef and knows who the 2 brothers, but he refers to her as Ishto is his only Rachel, which is very interesting, and that too had to impact Yosef. Now, together with that, how does he also describe Binyamin? Yehuda tells Yosef about this youngest son. It says that he is the youngest son, okay, and the father is very old. Well, who was actually described as the son of the old man, the son of a Ben Zikunim? Who was described that way? You're right. Huh? Yeah, huh? Who was the Ben Zikunim? Ben Zikunim was Yosef. The beginning of Vayeshev, right? Kiven Zikunim hu v'asalo ketonet pasim. That Yosef realizes, I was the Ben Zikunim. I was the youngest, favored one. And now, I'm not. But when he hears that now Binyamin is, he begins to get a little nostalgic, I would imagine. That, well, thank God it's my mother's son, and still a favorite son, but that's what I used to be also. And so that too was very important in the change of heart that Yosef has. And it's also a second thing. Right after we learn in Yosef that he was a Ben Zikunim, we read Vayisneu oto. There's a Vayisneu does not mean that the brothers less preferred him. It means they hated Yosef. But here, when they describe this Ben Zikunim, the youngest of the father, how is that? Father loves him, and we can never allow anything to happen to him. Wow. Yosef must be ready to break down, and he was indeed. This idea that instead of this youngest Ben Zekunim of Rachel being the target of enmity and hatred, is now the target of love and caring and protection to save it. That has to also impact Yosef quite a bit. And there's also one last thing which I touched upon, didn't really did say. There's something else that Yehuda says in describing about Binyamin and how favorite he was by the father. It says here that Yehuda says to Yosef, "Ve'achiv mate." That's one big thing. His brother has died. That's one big step for the recognition by Yosef that they thought he had died. Vayivater hu levado, and this younger one is alone, has remained alone le'imo, to his mother, and therefore va'aviv ahevo, his father loves him. First time ever in the whole story that one word is mentioned here. Mommy, v'imo. And whose mother was that? Yosef. Wow. Pretty powerful, I think. What?
He does not ask after her. He doesn't ask.
No, because when they tell the story, they say about the sons and the father. Yeah. The assumption was, look, the man was 130 when he came there, so they figured that it could be that he was a little older. Yaakov was 130 when they came to Egypt. When they came with Yaakov, he was 130. Social Security was very upset. Anyway, this is why the assumption that he's going to have a wife may not have been accepted. But the truth is also, we got to get into the concept of the ancient world. And I don't want to make this sound painful. In the ancient world, it was who the father was. Who was the father? Everything was the father, was based on male. And the idea of asking for the mother, there could have been many mothers, you had many wives, whatever, but it was a father. Who was a father who was passing down everything to the children? And so they wouldn't necessarily ask about the father, about the mother, I'm sorry. Although the angels did ask Avram about, where's your wife? Anyway, again, Rabbi Bazak said something that I really found very interesting too. In all of Tanakh, you know the one person who uses, and for whom is it described as someone who's ahav, who loved? It's Yaakov. Yaakov is the one who loved, and whom did it say he loved? 6 times it says it. 3 times he uses in his relationship to Rachel. Vayehav, this 2 more days, man. You gotta go to shul. It's in the pasha. Vayehav Yaakov et Rachel. Vayomer v'adcha sheva shanim v'Rachel bitcha haktana. He loved Rachel. 3 times it says that, and twice it says he loved Yosef. And once he says how he loved Binyamin. More than any other person in all of Tanakh is a time of loving. But who of all the loving tied to? Rachel and her sons. Doesn't say Leah was terrific. She loved, Yehuda was a terrific basketball player. We loved him. Yeah. Never, nothing. Only Rachel, Yosef, and Binyamin. again, it's an interesting thing. Don't get upset about this. Well, why didn't he do it? What kind of a parent? Just telling you what happened and what it shows. I'm sure he loved everybody, but the Torah says love 6 times by Yaakov. For those things, he's saying something. And that is powerful as the quotation that Yehuda leaves to Yosef when he talks about his father. He said, our father said, it says, Vayomer Avdecha Avi, Vayomer Avdecha Avi Aleinu, that our father said to us, Atem yada'atem ki shnayim yoldali ishti. You know that my wife gave birth to 2 sons. My wife? Remember this, Bilhah, Zilpah, Leah. Yeah. My wife gave me 2 sons. And Yosef hears that. And that's what the father Yaakov said to the son of Leah and the rest of the sons. My wife had 2 sons. Does that not impact Yosef? Certainly. Now, there is one thing, however, I want to see if I have this in my Membet and Memdaled. No, not there. You did a great job of leaving out things. There's something also very interesting difference that might be important. It was a detail that Yehuda claimed that Yaakov said, but did not, it seems. Yaakov says the following. Lo yereid b'ni imachem. He tells the brothers after they come back after the first time, and they told him, we have to bring Binyamin back. He says, no, not going to happen. Lo yereid b'ni imachem. My son will not go down with you. Ki achiv meit, because his one brother is dead. V'hu lo adon yashar. He's the only one who has survived. And if any accident happens, to him on the journey you're taking, you'll bring my death in mourning. Go down to my grave, mourning for that son as well. That's what Yaakov says. When Yehuda tells Yosef what his father said, he says the following. My father said, Atem yida'atem ki shnayim yolada li ishti. What I just said, you know that my wife gave birth to 2 sons. That's never mentioned here that he said it to the brother. It's only that that Yehuda tells Yosef that he said that. And one left me and never came back, and I said, Ach tarov torah. This is where Yosef realizes that the father believed that it was, because he's quoting Yaakov now. Yehuda is quoting Yaakov. And he's saying that his father Yaakov said, I had 2 sons from my wife. One has left me, one left, and I've never seen him again. And I thought, I said, Ach, Torah, undoubtedly, Ach, Tarov Torah. He was completely destroyed. He was killed by an animal. I haven't seen him since then. That's what he says, is what he said. If you're going to take this one now with me, the last one who survived from my wife, and something happens to him, then I will die mourning for this son. There's a big difference. Yaakov never said all about how Yosef and they were from the same mother and this one is gone. That wasn't said. But he does tell that story. Yehuda tells that story to Yosef. You see how he's mushing, he's really, really laying on the thick, oh, I can do this. And you should see we had a wonderful brother and this and that. He tells a whole big story to get that, that, uh, shall we say, get the viceroy to understand, to get him over to their side. And what's interesting, this one was Rav Bazak also. He said, in that conversation, when he quotes, when he says, actually, when Yaakov is talking to the sons, and he says to them, no, you're not going to take Binyamin. He doesn't say, Lo Yered Binyamin. He says, Lo Yered Bini Imachem. I'm not going to let you take my son. I won't give you that son. So, if Binyamin is indeed Bini and Rachel is Ishti, my real wife, the one I worked for, the one I married, and but if again we search for another whom Yaakov refers as Bini, you don't know what that is, okay? Where the special coat was taken by the brothers, stained with blood, and Yaakov sees it, and he says that Oivei, my son, has been destroyed, has been killed, and he says there the following: the agents of the brothers come with this coat. Remember, I explained to you that the brothers didn't bring the coat to the father. It was an agent, vayishlachu. It says they sent the coat with messengers, and the messenger said, simple. He said, "Ay, hakena haketonet binchahi alo. Is this your son's coat or not?" They don't say Yosef either. Maybe because they're strangers. They just know it's just your son. And what does Yaakov says? Ketonet bincha. He said, Oyvei, vayakira vayomet ketonet bini. This is my son's ketonet. Toraf Yosef. He's been torn apart by a wild animal, and he again tears his clothing. Vayit abel al bino, and he now mourns for his son for many days. And even when many came to comfort him, he wouldn't be comforted. And he said, Ki ered el bini avel. I will go mourning for the loss of my son. Bini, 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 bini. I think Binyamin is called Benny, but bini. The lack of the Yosef, but just my son, it's my son, is really a title maybe, or of love, of closeness. Yeah.
I'm sure there must have been a lot of discussion over the years about this coat and the negative repercussions. As an example to parents, like one of my sons has 6 boys, and I said to him yesterday, you may have a symbiotic relationship with one, but be very careful not to show it, because a little machlokas goes a long way. You may want to help one person. I said you give with the warm hand. When it comes to a will, you give equal distribution. But this jacket was probably the cause of a lot of divrei Torah.
Yeah, there was. You're right. Absolutely. So these are very, very powerful psukim, powerful verses that we find in this plea of Yehuda that have many reasons as to why Yosef would break down. Yeah, this Yosef who said years and years earlier, 20 years earlier, I'm going to go down to Bini. I will mourn for my son. Uh, and it's Ishti, my wife had my one wife had two sons. That's Ishti. So as we'll see later on in the end of Parshat Vayigash, there's a whole listing of the family. It's enumerated. It says Ele b'nei Leah. These are the sons of Leah. Ele b'nei Zilpah. Zilpah's sons. Ele b'nei Rachel. I'm sorry, Bilhah. But when it comes to Rachel, it says Ele b'nei Rachel Eshet Yaakov. The only one is called Yaakov's wife. And by the way, that's true also at the end of Yaakov's life, also at the end of the life, when he blesses his sons. And he reads, he gathers them around in the beginning of Vayechi. And he tells his sons to bury him at Ma'aran HaMachpelah. That's it, right? Shama Kavarti, there they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Yitzchak and his wife Rivka, and there I buried Leah. But what's missing? Obviously, Rachel. So he blesses them, and he says clearly very, very painful. And if you're sensitive, that's why I think the words are so good. The Torah is so remarkable. The sensitivity that you can almost taste in the words of Yaakov on his deathbed. It says, Shama Kavuet, as I started saying, Shama Kavuet Abraham vet Sarah Ishto. They buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. Shama Kavuet Yitzchak. And there they buried Yitzchak vet Rivka Ishto and his wife Rivka. Neshama Kavarti at Leah. And I've also buried Leah there. What word is missing? Ishti. It's Abraham and Sarah Ishto. It's just got Rivka as Ishto. And here it's and Leah. My wife, right? Let's see that. What he does say, of course, was that he apologizes. Va'ani b'vo'i me'aram meta alai Rachel b'derech. In effect saying, why didn't I bury her with everybody else in Ma'aran Machpelah? Because she died suddenly when we left Laban's house and left Aram, and I had to bury her b'derech Ephrata, he Beit Lechem. I won't go into Beit Lechem. There are a lot of Beit Lechems, you understand. They weren't just bakeries. Beit Lechem was found in this Beit Lechem Yehuda, and that's the one that we said. I mean, Moses Mendelssohn said, that's it. And we have a whole big thing. Everybody goes there, cries over there. But you look in Shmuel Aleph, I think it was Perek Tet or Yud. And there he reads that Shaul, having been told by the Navi Shmuel that he would be king, but he had not yet been officially crowned. He was given 3 signs, and one of the signs he says, you're going to go there and you're going to see your uncle there in the Kvurat Rachel in Binyamin. Well, Kvurat Rachel in Binyamin is north of Yerushalayim. Binyamin is north, not south in Yehuda where Kever Rachel is. It's Kvurat Rachel. And Beit Lechem, it says there. So there's still an argument what Beit Lechem is, although I had my favorite experience about that when I was in Tiberia. And there in Tiberia, we are going to the Rambam. Still a lot of people dead there. Rambam's kever, and everybody's kever, and Rabbi Akiva's kever. How many of that? Rambam we know was there, because we know when he was taken, who took it and everything. Do we know where there's a lot of it? You know who the great Ari Zal, who went around and found. He said this is where they are. They had a Kabbalah about that. We don't know officially, but physical evidence that it is. But that was his Kabbalah. This is a man who only spent 2 years in Israel. You understand that? The Ari came to Tzfat when he was 37, died at 39. Amazing that we think that he was there for all the time. No, 2 years. Anyway, there's a big sign of Kever Rachel.
Where?
Up in Tveria. Yeah. Rachel, the wife of Rabbi Akiva. But nobody knows who it is. It's just it's Rachel. I said, Kever Rachel. So my friend said, yeah, it's Rachel, the wife of Rabbi Akiva. It isn't the Rachel that we're talking about. But it says Kever Rachel. I said, oh, look, Kever Rachel over here. At any rate, this is why the speech made such an impact on Yosef, and why Lo Yachol Yosef L'Hitapek. That's what the next words are after the plea of Yehuda. It says, and he just couldn't keep it in anymore. Yosef couldn't hold back all this pain and so on and so forth. When all said and done, and there's one thing I haven't mentioned, that when I first looked into this, and I first thought that I found it very powerful. There's one word that repeats in that plea of Yehuda that had to tear Yosef's heart. 7 times the word Avi, my father. His elderly father, Avi, Avi, Avi. My Yosef, who hadn't seen him, the father who loved him so, and the father he just realized thought he was dead, and had to tear him apart. He couldn't hold it back anymore. It was a haunting cry. I don't know if even Yehuda understood that, because he didn't know that this viceroy was Yosef. But that repetition of Papa, my father, to Yosef's heart just is too much. And that tore him apart. So there you have it. Why did he break down? Lo yachol Yosef l'hitapek. He probably said, what do you mean my father? He's my father too. I wasn't there when he said this, but I think he should have said something like that when he said that. But that's what he was thinking. Wow. This is a powerful, powerful thing. We should never ask, how come he broke down? I would have broken down and watched it. Just amazing things. The little things, the text tells so much. A careful reading of a text opens up worlds to us when we carefully read the text. That's what I do here. So at any rate, we're ending here. And Baruch Hashem. Next time, I had planned to start with Moshe, but you know what? Since Hanukkah is coming up, and then I will be away for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks after that. So I don't want to stop Moshe. I'm poor Moshe all by himself. So we'll do that. Okay?